Husseini now joining us here live on RT International. Sam, a very warm welcome to you. Thanks for joining us on the program today.
Good to be with you.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I wanted to just get down to brass tacks here and just kick it off. The first question, I'm looking for the blame game here. The talks broke down in Islamabad, Sam. Can you tell me why they broke down? How did somebody cock it up so badly? What happened? What went wrong?
Well, we don't know that anything's gone wrong as far as the interests of the players involved are. Is this just part of the so-called negotiating process? Did the United States go in with the U.S. government go in with the slightest intention of actually coming to a deal, and so on? What we can say for certain is that the U.S. government's stated goals are not what's actually going on. They're not actually concerned about Iran's nuclear weapons capacity. Their concerns lie elsewhere, I believe. That could be something fairly obvious, like Israel's continued onslaught in Lebanon, or it could be more sophisticated things that are going on here. Again, I'd really like to emphasize this point. It's difficult to talk about these things as failures and successes when the stated goals are not the actual goals. That is, Trump is not actually concerned about protecting the American people or anything else that he claims to be.
So what are the goals, Sam? What are the real goals then? Can you help me understand?
Well, that I'm not a mind reader, but I can infer from actions and from timing of actions. Now we have, the statement, the 10 points included a cessation of hostilities, including in Lebanon, and Israel is outright saying that they want to annex part of Lebanon.
Yeah.
So that is perhaps the most obvious thing. There's obviously the factor that the United States and Israel want Iran to stop backing Palestinian groups. I don't know for a fact that that's come up in these talks, but it could well, and it could well be a major part of the subtext of what's wanted here. We also have the fact, as Trump's recent statements indicate, that, as to the control of the Straits of Hormuz and who gets this toll road, in effect. That is, it does part of we shouldn't view the Iranian government as monolithic. There are parts of it that are neoliberal. If they're just out to get a revenue stream from the Straits of Hormuz, and now they're basically, arguing with the United States as to whether or not the United States government gets a cut of this, that could be part of what's actually going on here.
There was Trump saying we're going to make lots of money, Sam. My apologies for interrupting, but Trump was like, hey, we're going to bank big time on this. Well, maybe we'll even share the fees here. I mean, look, everyone pays to get through the Suez Canal, but admittedly, the Strait of Hormuz has been free and open for so many years already. Trump is now saying that America is going to put forward a U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. How is that going to play out, Sam?
Not clear how it's going to play out, but what he is basically saying, which is brazenly illegal, is saying that we will stop ships from going through literally on the other side of the planet because we don't like what Iran is doing off of its own shore. So this is a complete globalization of what he did basically in the Caribbean last year, something that Kennedy, by the way, explicitly said he would not do in the case of the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is a hyper ramped up empire posture by the United States to say, I mean, many analysts who I have some sympathies with have always talked about how Iran had escalatory dominance in this, and I've always been questioning of that, particularly given the U.S. and Israel's massive nuclear weapons arsenal. But here we see that this view that Iran has escalatory dominance is highly questionable.
But it has got this economic escalatory position, hasn't it? I mean, essentially, when you, okay, we all know that the Strait of Hormuz is, 25% of the world's oil getting through there. But at the end of the day, Iran can effectively put its hands around the neck of the global economy, which means that Iran can affect the world, whereas Trump, for the meantime, is really affecting the Middle East. Of course, the knock-on effects are global. But I wanted to ask you, if Trump is going to do this U.S. naval blockade in Hormuz, he's suggesting his allies are going to be involved. I don't know if that means they're going to be dragged kicking and screaming, but your thoughts on that, Sam?
Well, I mean, Trump is threatening the global economy here. He is saying that we will prevent anyone from going through the Straits of Hormuz, and that he's saying that we will especially prevent anyone who actually pays Iran their toll. So is this a negotiating posture so that they can cut a better deal with Iran? Who gets the 20? Who gets the 80%? Or is this something more ominous? We also, the levels of deceit of the U.S. government are really numerous. They could, for example, be attempting to force Iran into this position in order to splinter it from, for example, India and China, to undermine BRICS.
Yeah.
I don't think that we should, view the statements from any governments at face value.
Yeah.
The U.S. could potentially benefit in certain ways from an undermining of the global economy. You had big tech benefit in many ways from the economic collapse in parts of the economy during COVID. Japan and South Korea are particularly vulnerable here. In some respects, they're rivals economically of the United States, even though they're, treaty allies in some respects. So there's a whole host of possible motives, and then the obvious brazen motive is someone associated with Team Trump playing the markets, as he issues these bellicose statements. So there are many levels of deceit. It's hard to prioritize them with any certainty, but one thing we do know is that the stated goals are not the actual goals. And there is this kind of sickening symbiotic relationship between the militarists on either side. Right? That is, you have not seen, at least with the case of the Gaza genocide, you saw South Africa go to the International Criminal Court to try to institute some level of sanity and legal process in this. And no one has stepped in to try to do that. It's this deal-cutting, questionable thing with an escalatory militaristic posture by both Iran and Iraq. So there's really no adult in the room here, which is sorely needed.
Such an intriguing conversation, Sam. I genuinely wish we had more time for this, but I'm going to have to wrap it up. Sam Husseini, a journalist joining us live on RT International, a very insightful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today.